seated. They should know better than to give me the floor. I'm just letting the sound guy know that I'm leaving this microphone. Is Daniel Fakari up there? Okay, so when I arrived earlier today and was just outside the choir room, they have a magnificent bulletin board with the pictures of all the people involved with the music department. And I just noticed that there was a Daniel Fakari on there, and lo and behold, he appears in your program. He wrote the Magnificat and the Nunc Dimittis settings, and they were spectacular. So thank you for that. I'm going to introduce you to another phenomenal young composer in a moment, but let me thank the choir for your work on this wonderful piece of music and to tell you how honored I am by your singing it. I'm so delighted to be here today. I have felt so welcome here. So many wonderful people have been so kind to me all day today, believe it or not. They stuck with me. And here I am at this a special moment. I'm going to do something that I've not done before, which is to tell you a little of the backstory of this piece of music, because it means so much to me. Last year, 3 dear friends of mine who were sitting right over there made a proposal to me, and they wanted to commission a piece of music in my honor. And I'm pretty sure my first reaction was to ask, don't you have to be dead for something like that to be done? And they convinced me that no, they could do it in my honor and not just in my memory. And then they commissioned someone I didn't know, an accomplished and brilliant composer, Dominic D'Orio, who's also here today. And only later, after he had completed this composition, we learned that Dominic actually had been a closeted and distressed 19-year-old Roman Catholic living in New Hampshire the year I was elected bishop and consecrated that fall, despairing of ever reconciling his faith with his sexual orientation. And he claims that that event inspired him to believe that reconciliation might be possible after all. Michael, Jeff, and John wanted the lyrics to come from things I had said in sermons and books and interviews and documentaries and so on. And it was Dominic who took on the task of choosing lyrics. And so in a few minutes, you will hear the Northeast regional premiere of that piece of music, accomplished with support from this wonderful cathedral, for which I'm really grateful. So I invite you actually to turn to the lyrics in your program and follow along with me as I tell you where some of these words came from. It reminds me of what I tried to do with my first book. I had a fight with my publisher. We agreed on the first part of the title of that first book, which was In the Eye of the Storm. And indeed, we thought that was appropriate because my election and consecration as the first openly gay and partnered priest made bishop in the Episcopal Church had caused quite a storm of controversy here in America and around the world. But I had to fight with them over the subtitle of my book, which I proposed was to be Swept to the Center by God. Because I wanted it to be absolutely clear in the title that whatever was being accomplished by my election and consecration was attributable not to me and not just to the courage of the Episcopal Church, but to God, who seemed to be intent on doing a new thing, as God is fairly notorious for. I had not done this alone. God was doing this new thing through the Episcopal Church's risking its very life for us, the LGBTQ community. Other denominations pulled back their work in this area and waited to see if this would kill us. I wanted my first book to glorify God and not me, and that's exactly what I believe this piece of music does, glorify God. So let me tell you now how God has shown up in my life and allow me to point to the ways this is God's story in these words. Early in the music, we are called to speak a calming word if we are to quell the storms that rage in our midst. Those are words that I prayed at the Lincoln Memorial at the beginning of Barack Obama's opening inaugural event in 2009, in which I was invited to pray the invocation. That calming word is needed in this time, is it not? When cruelty trumps compassion and white Christian nationalism threatens our democracy. So what is that calming word that needs to be spoken? Well, that word is that we know how all this will end. We know that in the end, love wins and God wins. We don't know when, we don't know if we'll live to see it, but we know it's true. It is the key to our hope and our resilience in these disturbing times. And the world needs to hear that calming word from us now more than ever. Then the music speaks of the certainty of God's love. This comes out of an experience I had prior to becoming bishop. For 18 years, I was the canon to the ordinary, sort of the chief of staff for the Bishop of New Hampshire. And as that person, I was the point person for conflict. When parishes saw me coming, they knew it was bad. So often this would be a problem between the rector and the vestry. And they might be fighting like cats and dogs. And the only thing, as I was driving there of an evening, the only thing I could be sure of is that when I arrived, they would stop fighting with each other and fight with me. And so on the way there, I would remind myself that no matter how tonight goes, I'm going to heaven. If I actually am helpful and lower everyone's anxiety and help them communicate, great, I'm going to heaven. If I completely botch this up tonight, and if it would be better if I had never showed up at all, you know what? I'm going to heaven. My worth has already been determined by God, and nothing can separate me from God's love. And that reminder, sometimes spoken out loud in the car driving to where I was going, would ease my fears and lower my anxiety so that more often than not, I was able to be helpful. Knowing the certainty of God's love for me and knowing I was going to heaven wasn't dependent on my getting everything right that night or ever. And because of that, God was often able to, in fact, use me for good. The newest installment of Wicked, after all, is called For Good, but we had it first. The middle part of this composition comes from Psalm 27. The psalm I credit with saving my spiritual life during the time I was getting death threats and being called despicable names by good church people here and around the world. And my spiritual director, Margaret Bullitt Jonas, taught me a new way to pray at this time. And it's still my go-to way to spend time in God's presence. Stop talking too much in your prayers, she told me. Just shut up, don't say anything, don't do anything, just sit there and let God do what God does best, which is to love you. She said, imagine light or warmth starting at the top of your head and oozing over your body like warm butter. Feel it, experience it. If your mind wanders, come back to it. Let God fill up that reservoir of God's love that will enable you to face whatever comes your way. And use that confidence to love your enemies anyway. It changed my life. Because God did show up, filled me up, and helped me to love, not hate, in return for hate. Psalm 27 ends with an amazing declaration. I encourage you to read it. It ends with, what if I had not believed in the goodness of the Lord? I feel that to this very day. What would my challenging and nearly impossible life have been like if I had not believed in the goodness of the Lord? Another lyric claims that fighting for justice is always dangerous business, a reminder that justice always comes at a price. And I almost daily remind myself that when Jesus preached at his hometown synagogue early in his ministry, it was all going really well, talking of love and respect for one another, until he went on to say that this love was to extend to the poor and vulnerable in their midst and beyond, and included those whom they hated. And that's when they tried to throw him off a cliff. I learned that when you're preaching love for all, and you mean all, they will always try to throw you off a cliff. You just have to own it and do it. And that's how you can get a sense that maybe you're doing God's will. And then comes this reference in the lyrics to being buried like seeds. When Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson, Missouri, and propelled the Black Lives Matter movement into a national movement, I called my friend who was dean of the cathedral in St. Louis, who had been active with Ferguson's people after Michael's murder. And I asked him, if I fly there, will you take me to meet these people and take me to Ferguson, which he did. And there, on a makeshift memorial in the middle of the street, literally down the line that separated the two lanes, where Michael had been murdered, I saw a rough, hand-painted sign among the teddy bears and flowers and other mementos. A painted sign that read, "They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds." I was dumbfounded. How had I never heard this before? This wise saying, this remarkable saying. Most of my Google research about it said that it was a Mexican proverb and had been used by the Zapatistas in western Mexico in their fight for their civil rights and freedom. But there was one Google entry about a Greek poet writing in the 1950s and 60s. I dug some more and eventually discovered Dinos Christianopoulos was a gay poet, ostracized for his sexual orientation by the literary community of Greece. He actually wrote, "What didn't you do to bury me? But you forgot that I was a seed." So from a gay Greek poet writing in the 50s and 60s to Western Mexican Zapatistas to young black men on the streets of Ferguson, Missouri, empowering the work of liberation. It's a whole new way to think about intersectionality. Now, of course, the oppression for each of these groups was different from each other, but their different experiences rhymed with each other and helped them trust that the hard times they suffered would one day make the seeds of oppression grow into blooms of liberation and freedom. It inspired me then, it continues to inspire me now, and reminds me to hold on to hope, because God is always at work, even and especially when things are looking dark. After all, we're in the hope business, and hope in these days is the source of our resilience against evil. It's what we need in this moment. It's what the world needs in this moment. And finally, the closing words of this music remind me of my most profound learning over the last 25 years since I became a bishop. That, quote, "When one is certain of God's love, there is no end to what one can bear." Which, by the way, is not the same as saying that there won't be challenges and pain and even devastating setbacks, but rather that we can do this. We can do this. It's in our Christian DNA. We can persevere in being God's loving arms in a world that desperately needs that love, despite all the odds against us. And why? Because however much I think I'm loved by God, I am actually loved way beyond that, way beyond anything that I or you can imagine. That God's love is deeper, wider, more forgiving, more inclusive, and more generous than anything you or I can hope for or imagine. So you see, this music you're about to hear may have been written in my honor, for which I will be forever humbled and grateful. But it is really all about what God can do and will do in your lives and mine. Something worthy of contemplating, isn't it, as we celebrate the birth of a small, vulnerable baby in a humble stable in Bethlehem and into our own hearts and lives, if we will but welcome him. The world's a frightening mess right now, not unlike the world Jesus was born into, when it looks like the darkness might conquer the light after all. Our hope is born in the knowledge that the darkness will never, ever conquer the light. And hope is still the best gift from God under our Christmas trees this year. So Merry Christmas anyway. I hope you enjoy this beautiful music. Together, let us glorify the God who loves us beyond our wildest imagining. Thank you for being here.